Denver District Attorney Beth McCann and her guests are here today to discuss another of the reforms that have been implemented in the Denver DA's office, the prosecution and treatment of alcohol and drug-related crimes and abuse, on this edition of Dialogue Denver DA.
The Denver District Attorney is a state of Colorado office elected by Denver voters. The two primary goals of the Denver District Attorney are prosecuting criminals to the fullest extent possible and protecting the rights and interests of innocent victims. None of the numbers add up. The numbers don't add up. I don't have any records that account anymore.
Let me refer you to someone who can help. I've got him on the line.
Thank you.
You can't keep up with me.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Case closed.
Hello everyone, I'm Tamara Banks and welcome to this edition of Dialogue Denver DA. Beth, it's great to see you again.
Nice to see you. Thank you for having us.
Oh, you bet. And speaking of us, you've got some fabulous guests here. Who do you have with you?
So Helen Morgan is the head of our behavioral health unit. She's a senior chief deputy in the DA's office. And Thane Bell is one of our deputy DAs in the behavioral health unit.
Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Tell us a little bit more about the behavioral health unit. I mean, you've been doing some reorganizing throughout your whole division. Tell me why this unit is so important to you.
So one of the things that I'm really interested in is looking at how people with mental health issues and drug abuse and alcoholism are treated in the criminal justice system, and how we can make that process work better. I think traditionally we haven't done a great job with folks who have those kinds of issues in the criminal justice system. So I was very excited that Helen was interested in this area and was wanted to be head of this unit. So we started what's called the Behavioral Health Unit to look at lots of issues, but certainly drug and mental health and alcoholism are all part of that unit.
And so you chose Helen, who was your opponent not too long ago in November. Tell me, why did you give this offer to Helen, and then Helen, why did you accept? I'll start with you, Beth.
So, I've known Helen for quite a number of years, and I've watched her through the campaign. She's very smart. She's got a lot of energy. She's got a lot of great ideas. I mean, she talked a lot about the drug court and those kinds of issues during the campaign. So when I was elected, we talked about what would she be most interested in. And it just dovetailed perfectly with what I'm interested in this area. And I have a lot of confidence in her because I know she's a hard worker and she's very committed. And I kind of joke sometimes. I say this is what happens when women run against each other. We like each other, and we can work together. So I was have been very pleased with what she's been doing already.
So Helen, you must be excited to take this opportunity.
I'm thrilled. Really, Beth has given me the job of a lifetime. We talked a little bit about what she wanted to see, and we knew each other's interests because of the campaign, which I think was it was a friendly campaign. We knew what we wanted to achieve, and so much of it was parallel. And so I asked her, I said, I have this idea. I'd like to create the behavioral health unit, and this is what it would look like. And she said, go forth, collaborate, and do good things. And so it's been great.
So Thane, let's bring you into the conversation. Tell us a little bit about the drug court and who qualifies for it, if you will, and how that plays a role into the behavioral health unit.
So the drug court is intensive probation for high-risk, high-need drug users. These are people who are constantly in the criminal justice system and are very high risk of overdose. We bring them into the system to try and give them a situation where we're connecting them with a lot of different providers and also providing consistent judicial oversight in hopes of trying to get them off use and out of the system on a more permanent basis than we would normally.
And then tell me about the sobriety court.
So the sobriety court is similar, but it's geared towards people who are having basically drinking and driving issues and alcohol issues. It's a similar model. It's a little bit more, it's a little different in the way they're treated, but it is a similar model.
And then, so what is it the Restart program?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that.
So the Restart program is for all the felony DUI offenders. So when they come through, it's an opportunity for them to try and avoid the felony conviction in some cases, not in all cases, depending on the facts, by showing a continued and prolonged sobriety period. That way that we can, again, protect people of community by getting these people off alcohol and stop abusing, as opposed to just kind of preventing basically future crimes.
But who's then eligible to be involved in this particular program?
The Restart program, you have to be a felony DUI, and then basically it's more who's not eligible. If you have too many DUIs, if you cause an injury during the accident, there are criteria like that their behavior is too severe to allow them the opportunity to be in that program. So that's generally how it works.
But then are they still prosecuted for their crimes, or what happens to them?
So again, depending on exactly what they did, they get a plea offer, and they have to accept the plea offer. If they're able to show sobriety over a long period of time, we won't revoke them, we won't put them in jail, they'll avoid criminal or time in custody. But they still all are prosecuted for their crimes in the case.
So let me ask you both, Beth and Helen, about people. Some people might say, you know what, these folks committed crimes. They should be prosecuted to the length of the law. What are your thoughts? What are your feelings about that?
Well, they are being prosecuted generally. I mean, we do bring the case. But my feeling is that often these folks are addicted to whether it's a drug or alcohol. And if we don't get to that sort of root cause of addiction, it's just going to continue. Just like with the DUIs, you know, I was one of the sponsors of that felony DUI bill. People would say to me, fourth DUI? I mean, why don't you make them felonies after 2? But it's a repeated behavior, and if we can't, if we can't address that underlying cause, we're really not protecting the community, because these folks will get out and do it again. So, I mean, there's some people, like Thane was saying, that they reach a point where they just need to go to prison to get out of circulation because they're too dangerous. But there are many, many people who I think, if they're given the opportunity, can do a better job with themselves, make better choices, and then become productive.
And I guess this is where the behavioral health unit plays a real instrumental role.
Absolutely. And following up from what Beth has said, you can send somebody to jail, and very often for someone who has a substance abuse or a mental health disorder, it's easier to be in jail or the Department of Corrections than it is to really work on your issues. And so we're not giving people a pass. What we're asking them to do is invest in their future. We invest in their future so that public safety is best served, and they also as individuals are best served. Putting somebody in jail takes away their job, potentially, takes away their housing, potentially, takes away income from their families, from their kids, from their spouses, from other people who rely on them. And so in the long run, it's a cost saving, and it's holding people accountable in a way that meets best practices and ensures all of us that we can have a safer Denver. So it's the best way to go.
And you bring up an interesting point. The whole family is impacted by one person's choice, and should the whole family have to suffer and be punished for one person's choice?
Right, and often, we talk about choices, but the bottom line is what Beth has recognized is both substance abuse and mental health disorders are public health issues, much more than they are criminal issues. We see them in the criminal justice system so often because there have been prior failures within a public health system, within an education system, within other systems. But the only way that we are effectively going to address this issue is by a public health model, and that's what we're moving towards in the behavioral health unit.
Right. So let me just, on a completely different subject, but one I understand also is being done by the behavioral health unit, is what's being done by the district attorney's office that is new with respect to first advisements. I think that's kind of an important thing to bring up.
So when I took office, I became aware of the fact that our deputies were not appearing at what's called first advisement. And that's a proceeding in court when someone is being investigated for a crime. They are informed at the first advisement of what they're being investigated for and bond is typically set at that point. They are in custody and they are brought into court. So the public defender was there, but the DA wasn't, and I think it left a void in the judge's ability to weigh what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And so I decided that we should appear at first advisements. And Helen just took that on immediately, and I'll let her explain how she does it. It's very effective.
So basically what happens is myself or a member of my team will go after everybody. If you are arrested and processed by 7 o'clock in the morning, you're going to be on the docket at 1:30 in the afternoon in courtroom 2300. And so we go and meet with the public defenders and with pretrial at some point before 1:30, and we go through people's pretrial assessments. So we have validated assessments that tell us somebody's risk to reoffend, and with domestic violence offenders, a specific tool that we use about their risk to reoffend. And based on that information, we make decisions about who should be released immediately on a personal recognizance bond, who should be released with additional safety precautions, such as GPS, which is where are you today and where are you tomorrow? Who should get a curfew? It's amazing the number of people who wouldn't commit crimes if we could just keep them in their house from 10 p.m. to 8 o'clock in the morning. And those sort of things. So we talk about that as a group and make decisions based on the evidence that we have. Mental Health Corporation of Denver sometimes joins those conversations, and we'll make referrals there. So what we are doing is setting somebody up for success to the extent that we can, and identifying those true public safety risks who need to be in jail while their case is processed, and letting everybody else continue with their life as we make a determination as to what should happen with the case. We do it 7 days a week, and so Thane will be there, and then other members of my unit will be there, but we're there every day.
Well, I noticed you talking earlier about working on Saturday and Sunday.
Yes.
So this is obviously a very new thing.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's a totally different approach to the way you prosecute people and get them in through the system, and it sounds like a very timely, respectful manner. When you were speaking, that's sort of what the word that popped into my head.
Yeah. Really what it is, we look at the population who comes into the criminal justice system, and so many people, we can all say, there but for the grace of God, or there but for the grace of a medical illness, or there but for the grace of lack of funding, whatever. Go all of us. So let's treat, it is a community of people that we need to treat with respect, and thank you for sort of thinking about that word. And then what's the best thing to do for everybody? What's the best thing for society? What's the best thing for the victim? That's very important to us. And what's the best thing that Denver can do to make sure you don't reoffend and you get into some form of recovery if that's important?
Great. We're going to take a quick break. We're talking about some really great stuff, so stay with us. We'll be right back on this edition of Dialogue Denver DA. Back in a moment. Welcome back to Dialogue Denver DA. I'm Tamara Banks, and we're talking about behavioral health unit at the DA's office, but this is the portion of the show where we talk about a legal term. And actually today we have two legal terms. The first one is first advisement, and that's the first advisement after a person has been arrested, informs the suspect of the charges for which the suspect is being investigated, and Beth talked about that a little bit earlier. The second advisement is just that, is a hearing after the prosecutor files charges at which the judge advises the defendant of the formal filing of charges against him or her. So again, those are pretty important time frames for the whole justice system, particularly the suspect, the
Yes.
defendant in this case.
Yes. So normally we have 72 hours after someone's been arrested to actually file the charges. So it's a pretty short time frame. And the second advisement is when the judge informs the person of what charges have actually been filed. And usually a public defender is available or appointed, and there can be further, well, we're changing that. There usually could be further discussion of bond, but because we're now doing bond arguments at first advisement, there is not going to be so much discussion of bond at that point. But Helen can also tell you about her idea about doing second advisements a little bit differently in terms of the court. And do you want to mention that, Helen?
Sure. So one of the things that we have traditionally done at second advisement is these are the charges against you. Your case is going to be assigned to a prosecutor, and at some point you'll get an offer to try and resolve the case short of trial. And in my experience, having done this for 23 years, I can look at a case and give it a gander and have a pretty good idea on most cases where we're going with this case, and especially if where we're going is some form of community supervision, so you're going to be on probation of some kind. Why are we waiting a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks down the line? We know the further you are away from getting treatment and getting help for your issues, the more difficult it is. The best time for us to capture somebody's interest in treatment is when they're at their lowest, which is when they've been contacted by the police department. So I think at second advisements, which my team is going to start taking over at the end of September, we're going to look long and hard about trying to get some people into probation, into diversion, into other programs before they even hit what I would call the regular rotation of DAs, to also give some relief to the DAs who are currently doing the prosecution work of our homicides and of our sexual assaults and of our aggravated robberies, because our numbers are up in felony filings, and they need some relief to be able to focus on those really important cases.
Absolutely. And so before we took the break, we were also talking about a different approach in terms of getting people in front of a judge. And if they got in on a Friday, they don't have to wait until Monday to come out. And we talked a little bit started to talk about how this might make life easier for a judge as well, which is part of the whole system and part of the plan, right?
Yes, I think the judges are very happy to have the DAs in the courtroom and helping determine what's an appropriate resolution of this case earlier. So I think they're very happy about it.
Let's talk. Let's bring Thane back into the conversation. We've been not ignoring you on purpose, but let's talk a little bit about the new sentencing law for DUI offenders with 4 or more DUI convictions, which requires a mandatory 90 to 180 days in jail as a condition of probation, or 120 to 2 years in jail or work in education. How does the new sentencing impact the Restart program?
It's a part of the negotiation process in deciding what is the most appropriate outcome for each particular case. It gives us more tools to be able to require and effectively treat and hopefully help these people deal with their addiction and not become part of the system. So overall, it's been definitely a benefit for us. I think it's definitely improved our ability to do our job and to be more successful in getting them the services they need.
And of course, we know that marijuana has been a big topic of discussion, not just locally, but nationally. The U.S. Attorney General, in part because of the work that they're going to do to prosecute folks such as Washington and Nevada. Is marijuana abuse something that you see in drug court a lot, or?
So absolutely, we definitely see marijuana abuse in drug court, but it's not one of our primary areas. We mostly focus on heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine base or crack. Those are the drugs that seem to cause the most harm to our community as a whole. Drug court operates on a sobriety model, though, So if you are a marijuana user, you're expected to not use marijuana while in drug court. So everyone has to be off marijuana, alcohol, and whatever their harder substance is. The research shows that is the most effective way to treat their addiction. So it's a part of it, but we definitely focus on those other ones because they seem to have the greatest negative impact on our community.
Right. And then opioids. You know, we're hearing big discussion around the president's war on opioids, if you will. What are you seeing in the drug courts here?
They're absolutely increasing. I think they count for about a quarter of our filings that we see in Denver, and that's definitely up. But the truth is, in Denver, our biggest harmful drug is methamphetamine. I think it's almost half. We have started in treating both opiate addictions and methamphetamine addictions with medicated assistance through methadone and I always forget the name of the other drug, but Suboxone. And I think that is helping, and we're continuing to work with the community to try and come up with new approaches and different approaches to try and help these people get off these addictions. But it is very real, and we do see it every day in drug court.
Well, and I think that's something that some people forget sometimes, is that while this is a legal system and we prosecute people and we keep the streets safe, it's also about helping people get off an addiction or find a better path, which again speaks to the point of having the behavioral health unit.
Yeah, it's really a holistic approach. It's about getting people into recovery and using the tools that are best able to help people get into recovery, and sometimes that's a peer system, sometimes that's a harm reduction system, sometimes that's getting people housing and connecting people with housing, because then they can really start to engage in their recovery.
Absolutely. So Beth, you can speak a little bit more to point out that there's a public and government outcry to address the opioid issue, but there doesn't seem to be much outcry regarding other drugs. Talk to me about your philosophy around this.
Well, it concerns me, I guess, that now that more wealthy people, perhaps more white people, are involved in opioid abuse, that the perception is more oriented toward a public health problem and not so much a criminal justice problem, as opposed to these other drugs where it's also a public health problem, as Helen was saying. You know, a drug addiction is a public health problem, and we need to be looking at it from that angle, certainly in terms of those who are addicted. I mean, people who deal drugs and who, in my opinion, prey on addicts, that's a different story, unless they are drug addicted themselves. But you know, people who bring in illegal drugs, that kind of behavior, we definitely will continue to prosecute. But I think we also need to look at the public health piece of it. You know, we were when I was in the legislature, we passed a bill to increase our prescription drug monitoring program, where pharmacists have to enter the data whenever they fill a narcotic prescription, and doctors have access to that data system. So now it's a lot more doctors are participating. So we are seeing a drop-off in some of the opioid prescription writing. As a result, I think people were doctor shopping, so they would go from doctor to doctor or pharmacy to pharmacy to get their prescriptions filled, and now we have a way to monitor that. And doctors can check in with respect to their patient if they are doing that, getting a lot of prescriptions. But the goal of it is not really punitive. The goal is to inform the doctor or the medical provider so they can help that person find out what is the problem. There are people who need pain pills just to live. I mean, they are in so much pain because of a chronic injury or a chronic condition. But it informs the doctor that this person is abusing. And so that gives the doctor the opportunity to sit down with that patient, refer them out, keep up with them, you know, just a more enlightened approach instead of just, okay, here's another prescription.
Exactly.
So I think the fact that we are seeing this national interest is very positive, because I think we will see more resources, we will see more people looking at it as a public health issue.
And you traveled to Seattle, right,
Yes.
to learn a little bit more about the LEAD
Yes,
program,
and
right?
Helen is going to Seattle in September with a big group from Denver. It's LEAD, Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion. And it's a very interesting and innovative program which allows the officer on the street to actually divert someone into a treatment program or a support program if the officer feels that this person is appropriate. There is also an assessment done right there on the street. But the beauty of it is these officers know these folks. I mean, they arrest them, they go to jail, they get out again, they arrest them again, they go to jail, you know.
Yeah.
And so the officers in Seattle are very enthusiastic about this program because they see it as having more likelihood of success if they don't just repeat this behavior. And they actually identify people who could benefit from addiction treatment. So I'm hoping we'll be able to start it here in Denver. That's our plan if we can get the funding that is available starting, well, we have to put in a grant application that's due the end of October, so.
That would be really exciting.
Very interesting.
And we just have a couple of maybe 60 seconds left. I'm just maybe Beth kind of summarize how you feel about this different approach to prosecuting drug abuse, particularly as it relates to criminal behavior.
Yes, I am really excited about it. We have a very collaborative effort in Denver. We're very fortunate that we have the DA's office, we have the public defender, we have the courts, probation, pretrial services. They're all kind of looking together at how can we do this better. And you know, we have leaders like Helen and Thane and others involved in really making a difference. I think we all recognize that we could be doing things better in this arena, and I'm very hopeful that we can really make a difference and increase public safety and also get people to be productive and lead better lives.
And I imagine, too, the tone of society has changed to where you get the support for this kind of approach, right? Versus, you know, there are still a few people who say, lock them up, but I think people are starting to get the hint that, you know, it really is a holistic approach, to use your word, Helen, and that you really need that societal background, backing. Yeah. Thane, any moments of
He's actually in the trenches. Well, these two are both in the trenches. He's more in the trenches. So
yeah, I mean, you see amazing, sad, and amazing things every day.
You know, I love working in drug court because you can see people's lives transformed. It's amazing. I've been to a ton of graduations now in my career, and every time there's one or two people that just, you really see the difference you were able to make. But you're right, we also see the flip side. People fail out. We see people's families devastated when their loved ones just can't get it together. So there's room for us to continue to improve. I think what we're doing, though, is making a huge difference to the community as a whole. We're saving Denverites, and we're improving the safety for everyone. So I love the new approach. I think it's making a huge impact on our community, and I think it will continue to do so.
Yeah, it's what's needed in this moment in time in particular. Thank you all so much for the hard work that you do. I really appreciate it, and keep up the great work. Thank you to District Attorney Beth McCann and to Helen Morgan and Thane Bell for today's conversation on alcohol and drug-related crimes in the criminal justice system. I'm Tamara Banks, and we'll see you next time on Dialogue Denver DA.